is Russia's continuing support for Assad's troops tipping the balance on the ground?
Well, it certainly seems that the Russian airstrikes have bolstered the Syrian army's success on the ground. In the last 48 hours, the Syrian army is claiming that it's retaken 30 villages following 72 airstrikes by the Russian Air Force. And indeed, that's the pattern that we've seen, broadly speaking, since the Russian airstrike started on the 30th of September, with the Syrian army reversing the losses and taking back territory that it had lost to opposition fighters. Now, let's not forget that in the past year, it had been a very different picture, with the opposition looking like it had the upper hand, thinking particularly in the northwestern province of Idlib. There, a new alliance of opposition forces, including Jabhat al-Nusra, the al-Qaeda-linked organization within Syria, had made gains, getting close to the heartland of Assad's support in Latakia. And then, of course, in the far east, the Islamic State group had also made gains throughout the years, coming to within 150 kilometers of Damascus city itself. So, to this point, the gains that have been made since the Russian airstrike starts are, it must be said, moderate. I mean, they haven't had any huge reversals so far. However, what you can say for certain is that it's put the Syrian army back on the offensive, where for at least the last year it had, by and large, in most places across the country, been on the defensive.
Well, you mentioned some of the forces on the ground. Putin has been suggesting that Assad could work with moderate rebels, yet it appears that Russia is continuing to target those same moderate rebels at the same time as it strikes the Islamic State organization, it says.
That's right. On the one hand, Putin has suggested that perhaps there could be this alliance that your package just spoke about there between Assad and other rebels against Assad and moderate rebels, against the Islamic State group. But the first thing you'd have to consider there is whether any of those more moderate or even other rebels other than ISIS would join in any kind of alliance with Assad. And the resounding answer to that is probably a no. The vast majority of them made it very clear that they want to see Assad go before as their first demand. The second point is that even if Putin is saying that perhaps Assad could join moderate militants in Syria against the Islamic State group, well, up until this point, the Syrian airstrikes have hit, by and large, exactly those very same moderate rebels in the country. That's according to analysis of maps provided by the Russian Defense Ministry themselves, which Reuters said 80% of which of the strikes were actually in areas other than those held by the Islamic State group. On top of that, you should bear in mind that whoever these airstrikes are targeting and whoever they're by, they're causing civilian casualties. According to one estimate, as many as 370 civilians have been killed by Russian airstrikes since they began in September, and by another estimate by a group calling themselves Air Wars, that over 450 civilians have been killed by US and allied airstrikes in both Syria and Iraq. So both of those airstrikes causing civilian casualties and indeed changing the battlefield on the ground, which will lead to further offensives and more people fleeing their homes as refugees.